This is no ordinary Hyundai i20. This is the i20N. Now, Hyundai really knows its stuff when it comes to performance hatches, and you can also check out its WRC car, you can check out the i30N and how brilliantly that's done to know that these guys really know what they are doing. So, it is not just a fast i20 with a posh paint job, this thing has been properly overhauled. Before we go into the details though, don't forget to subscribe to the CarGurus UK YouTube channel and turn on your notifications so that you don't miss any of our videos. So, in that overhaul that I mentioned, Hyundai has strengthened the shell of this car in 12 points, so it's a much stiffer car. It's got a beefier torsion beam, it's got beefier brakes, the suspension of course has been really heavily tweaked, modified, everything that they possibly can do, Hyundai has done to make this car more fizzy. And you know, reading the specs about it, it feels like they really have focused on that handling, and that 201 brake horsepower, 1.6 turbocharged engine is kind of a secondary consideration really to, you know, the handling and how this thing's going to be to drive on the road. So that's all very exciting, and it needs to live up to these looks because you are not going to miss this thing coming, are you? The trademark Hyundai N blue paint of course helps, but I mean look, check out this red line that goes all the way around the car. Look at this fixed rear wing. It's not a spoiler, it's a proper wing. I mean, it's like, this is like Pikes Peak stuff almost, by Super Mini standards anyway. Before we get on to the driving stuff though, one very quick comment on, you know, the practicality, the equipment of this thing. It's never going to be your chief priority when you're buying like a really kind of fast little car like this, but it is often a significant consideration if you've got kids and all of that stuff. That is because the i20 is 5 doors as standard, and it's one of the most spacious small cars you can buy anyway, so you'll get 2 kids or lanky teens in the back, no worries at all. The boot is plenty big enough too, and of course you can drop the seats if you need to. At £25,000 with everything you see here other than the contrast roof and Bose sound system included as standard, it's also a bit better equipped and has a bigger, glossier, generally better infotainment system than its arch nemesis, the almost identically priced Ford Fiesta ST. So it certainly ticks those common sense boxes, but enough common sense, let's find out what the i20N is really about. And what the i20N is all about is driving, of course. This thing is an absolute lunatic. It is a proper little mini rally car for the road, that's exactly what it feels like. And what's funny about it is that this car it's got more adaptive elements than most other cars I can think of. Despite being in what you'd expect to be quite a simple sort of car, you know, this class and cost, you would expect it to be quite simple. It's not. So you go into your N mode in here, and you have got adaptive everything. So first off, you're met with all your kind of temperatures, your engine temp, your oil temp, all of that stuff, which is quite cool, I like that. But then you've got this full-on menu of all of your adaptive stuff. You've got 3 settings for your steering, for your rev match, for your exhaust sound. You've got different traction control settings. On top of that, you've got launch control that you can activate. You can even change the shift lights. You can change when the shift lights come on the dials down here, which are all digital and which also change when you change your drive modes. All of that. On top of that, you've even got your normal, you know, your eco, yeah, you're really going to use that often, aren't you? Your normal and your sport modes down here. Then you've got your 2 N modes here, which allow you to configure everything, all this adaptive stuff, so you can have completely your own setup on either of these buttons. So it's a really complicated thing. So everything is adjustable, apart from the suspension, ironically, which is often adaptive in lots of the i20's rivals. In this car, it's not. And like I said, it's a bit ironic because you've got all of this adaptive stuff, all of this digital things that you can tweak, the sound, everything, and yet this car always feels angry. It just feels like you've got kind of like sportier and even sportier still, basically. Nothing is more aggressive about this car than the way it goes around a corner. It's like an Evo or an Impreza or something. It's amazing. It's got an electromechanical diff, this thing, and you really feel it working. It's really effective. What I would say is that it's not quite as playful a handling as you get in a Fiesta ST. That's got a slightly more mobile kind of rear axle to it. You get a bit more lift-off oversteer. This isn't about the lift-off oversteer. It's not really about steering it on the throttle so much. It's much more about just sheer kind of forceful pace and grip through a corner, and that is just as much fun. It's just a different brand of fun. And it's so cool that it's so evocative of those cars. I mean, they were such heroic cars, those things, but they were so awful for being horrifically expensive to run, for being difficult to live with, all of that stuff. And yet here you have like one of the most affordable performance cars on the market, and it really smacks at those cars. I mean, what a cool thing that is. How wonderful. And how good that Hyundai have made this such a characterful, really kind of, you know, real bombastic, overt character. I love it. It's such a cool thing. It's really fun. And the engine? Well, it isn't the star of the show so much as the handling, but it is still a huge part of the i20's appeal. At 6.2 seconds to 62 miles an hour, this is a properly fast car, but more than that, the engine has got a really elastic, accessible spread of torque, yet you can rev it out to well beyond 6,000 RPM if you want to. The 6-speed gearbox has a lovely snappy shift too, but if you don't want to use the rev match function, then the pedals are perfectly placed for heeling and towing. But all of that does come with some downsides. Driving position's really nice, seat's really good, but there's no lumbar adjustment. It's quite a firm seat, and I have to say I find it a little bit uncomfortable on a long journey. That ride, and I mentioned it's not got adaptive dampers, and you are going to feel that on some roads, so you get that kind of restless, kind of bobbing ride comfort in the i20, which is a bit hard to take sometimes. High speed ride, it does settle down, and I think if you're the sort of person that wants a car that looks like this, that sounds like this, I think you're probably going to be more than fine with the ride. But it's a bit tiring. It does feel like a car that never switches off. You never forget that this is a hot hatch. It's not like the Fiesta, which kind of settles down and it's a bit quieter on the motorway and it's just a bit easy to live with. This is a hot hatch, and you get a hot hatch whether you're in eco mode, normal mode, whatever. And ultimately, I find that if I were 22, I would buy this car in a heartbeat over a Fiesta or anything else, because I just love that machismo, that kind of, you know, the whole kind of swagger of it is so awesome. Well, let's say it's fun then, that is for sure. And back to the common sense stuff, the i20N will also do well over 40 mpg on the motorway without trying very hard, and it's even in a pretty reasonable insurance Group 27, so it really is way more sensible on the pocket than you'd expect of such a ridiculously fun little car. Do you know what? The best thing about the i20N is that it's just like nothing else. There is no other car that is remotely in the same price territory that feels anything like this. I mean, I've mentioned the Fiesta ST before because it really is, you know, it's the obvious rival to this car, and I think the Fiesta is a more grown-up proposition. I think it handles slightly better, slightly purer, but I think this in its own way can be more fun, more theatre, more noise, just a bit more kind of rally gumption to it, and that is just a joyous thing. So basically, the Fiesta grew up and this didn't. If you haven't grown up yet, this might well be the small hot hatch for you. Head to cargurus.co.uk for a whole host of fantastic used cars, Ford Fiestas, Hyundais and more, all from top-rated dealers.